Hello, I'm Erik Robey.
And I'm Karla Schaffer, and this is Anne Arundel County Week in Review. In today's show, we will update you on legislation inspired by a Siberian Husky and bring you the happy ending of a story about a critically missing man. Making headlines this week. This week, Pasadena Elementary School was buzzing with activity, but it wasn't because of the students. County Executive Leopold hosted Community Connections Day and a constituent open house at the school, and scores of county residents took advantage. The event featured one-on-one access to the county executive and his cabinet, and also informational booths about all of our programs and services. Visitors had a chance to learn more about our recycling effort, spring youth sports, and how we maintain roads. Speaking of the event, County Executive Leopold said, "Some problems are best solved by meeting face-to-face. We believe these events held a couple of times a year make the administration even more responsive to citizens." Open houses are held quarterly at different locations around the county, and Community Connections Day is held annually. It might be coming to your town soon.
Well, we now turn to the political debate raging in Annapolis. As you know, Karla, the Maryland General Assembly meets for 90 days each year to pass new laws and our state budget. Well, there's one bill that County Executive Leopold is particularly interested in as a pet owner. We call it the Bear Bear Bill because it was inspired by the shooting of a Siberian Husky named Bear Bear at a Severn dog park last year. The legislation, House Bill 294, would increase the maximum penalties for animal cruelty from 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine to 6 months in jail and a $2,500 fine. A separate misdemeanor is added in the legislation for use of a firearm that carries a maximum of 1 year in jail time plus $5,000 in fines. County Executive Leopold testified in favor of the legislation, saying, "Our pets are like members of our families. We think that the state of Maryland should send a strong message that it's unacceptable to abuse animals." The Bear Bear case sparked outrage locally and internationally on the internet. There have been 2 other high-profile cases in the last 2 years where a cat and a dog were doused in gasoline and lit on fire. County Executive Leopold is supporting an amendment that's introduced by Delegate Bob Costa of Deal that adds accelerant as a weapon covered under the firearms provision. The Senate Judiciary Committee will hold the next public hearing on March 3rd. For more information on how you can testify on the bill in person or in writing, call 410-441-2363.
This week, the Anne Arundel County Fire Department responded to 1,383 calls for service. This included more than 1,041 emergency medical calls and 138 fire calls. This week, one person walked away uninjured from a horrific accident in the Pasadena area of the county, and county firefighters battled a fire that destroyed a home in North County. With us now to tell us more about these incidents is Division Chief Michael Cox of the Anne Arundel County Fire Department. Chief?
Thanks, Karla. Around 10:24 p.m. on Saturday, February 12, 2011, Anne Arundel County firefighters responded to a reported motor vehicle collision in front of number 4414 Mountain Road. The first unit to arrive on the scene reported a single vehicle rollover accident with entrapment. Firefighters and paramedics worked to stabilize the vehicle and remove the patient from the wreckage, utilizing specialized rescue tools. Once freed from the wreckage, the male driver, who was estimated to be in his mid-30s, was evaluated by paramedics on the scene. However, the patient ultimately refused medical treatment and transportation to the hospital against medical advice. In a second incident, one person was injured when their house caught fire in the early morning hours Tuesday, February 15, 2011. Anne Arundel County firefighters were called to the 900 block of Church Street in the Brooklyn Park area of the county shortly after 5 a.m. The first unit to arrive on the scene reported fire coming from the front of a one-story single-family dwelling. At that time, the first arriving crews initiated an interior fire attack. In all, it took more than 30 firefighters from Anne Arundel County and Baltimore City about an hour to bring the one-alarm incident under control. There were 2 occupants home at the time of the fire, and they were both able to escape prior to the fire department's arrival. However, one of the occupants, a 50-year-old male, did suffer a lacerated hand and possible inhalation injuries as a result of the incident. The occupant was treated by fire department paramedics at the scene and ultimately transported to the University of Maryland Shock Trauma Center in Baltimore via ground ambulance. In addition, no firefighters were injured during the incident. Karla?
Thanks, Chief. County fire officials advised that the fire, which caused an estimated $200,000 of damages, originated in the kitchen area of a home that was believed to be accidental. The home was not equipped with any functional smoke alarms, and the local chapter of the American Red Cross was assisting the residents.
In this week's Community Spotlight, Jody Leddy talks to Karen Sank and Barbara Buchleitner about the county's snow patrol. Jody.
Hello, I'm Jody Leddy. I'm here today with Karen Sank, who works for Anne Arundel County's Office of Emergency Management, and Barb Buchleitner, who works with the Department of Aging. Today we're going to talk about a very timely resource that may impact all residents of Anne Arundel County. We're talking about the Snow Patrol. So Karen, tell us, what is the Snow Patrol?
The Snow Patrol is actually a program of our Citizen Corps Council, and it's to help people, usually older people, people with disabilities who cannot shovel their walks, their driveways. It's been around for a few years, and we work in conjunction with the Volunteer Center and Department of Aging to keep this going.
Okay, so it's all run by volunteers?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if I wanted to volunteer to be on the Snow Patrol, how would I sign up?
You would want to get in touch with the Volunteer Center. They will send you the forms, all the things that you would need for the background check or whatever needs to be done.
Okay, so what about, obviously as an individual I could sign up, but what about groups, church organizations, scout troops? Can those sign up too as well?
Can.
Barb, you want to address
yes,
that?
If you are a member of a group, in fact, we have some Girl Scouts and some church groups that have volunteered. The only requirement, though, is when you go to the home, there needs to be an adult present. So if you're, a group of Girl Scouts that are below the age of 18, then there would need to be an adult present.
Okay, good. So there is really no minimum age limit so long as there's an adult chaperoning the situation.
Right. And we have lots of families that volunteer, which is really nice.
Great. So if I go out to someone's house, how do they know that I'm there for the Snow Patrol? Is there some sort of identification that I take with me? Or?
Basically, when a volunteer goes for Snow Patrol, they do have a waiver with them that needs to be signed by the homeowner. But what we do ask is, and when we talk to the homeowner, is that they do not let the volunteer into their home, or that the volunteer, that they keep it a professional sort of relationship because of liabilities and things.
Right. So unfortunately, no inviting in for hot chocolate.
No hot chocolate, no.
Just a thank you at the door will do.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So how do I request such a service? Obviously, I shouldn't have to request it, right? I should go out or make my husband go out and shovel himself. But
you could be volunteers.
If I did have a need and I needed to get out and I were elderly or disabled, how would I contact?
You'd be contacting Office of Emergency Management. This is only done during activation of the Emergency Operations Center.
Okay.
So this is not a day-to-day thing. They have a main number that people call. I take that information, who they are, their address, that type of thing, and what they need, and I pass it on to Barb. And that when then she goes ahead and does her part, and let her explain her part of what she does. But that's how you get to it.
Okay, so they would call the Office of Emergency Management, the EOC, and it's only when that center is being open. Now, how do people know when that's open? Is it on the radio? Is it?
It's not really on the radio, but during an emergency, we get a lot of calls anyhow. So we'll know, because it's the regular phone number, it just switched over to the Emergency Operations Center.
I see.
So if people call, we'll be able to tell them, if we're operational, if we are doing the Snow Patrol, that type of thing.
Okay. So in general, if the weather warrants it, you're going to be open.
Exactly.
Okay, sounds good. So what hours can people call in general, or is it the Snow Patrol or the Office of Emergency Management is 24 hours, right? When it's open? 24
hours. Yes, it's 24 hours if the EOC is open. We always have an answering machine on here because we have a regular office, with office hours, but people can always call because we pick up the messages.
I see. And Barb, I would imagine the volunteers aren't available 24 hours.
Right, that's true. What normally happens is when the Office of Emergency Management, when they refer a client to us or a senior to us, we call them and make an assessment of their needs.
Okay.
Sometimes, if it's a very frail senior, safety is always an issue, and there are certain times when people shouldn't be out. So what we'll do is we will assess the situation, and if things need to be brought to the home, like prescription drugs, that type of thing, then many times we'll refer it back and someone will bring medication into the home. So, a person's safety is the primary consideration in
Right,
all of this.
And along those lines, regarding personal safety, if you don't need to go out in a
Exactly.
blizzard, do not go out.
That is, and yeah, that's our first. That's our first consideration is the client's safety.
And of course, in an absolute emergency, call 911. Correct?
And,
Oh, absolutely.
And yes, absolutely.
Okay. Sounds great. So this sounds like a great program to get everybody in the spirit of community, helping out, and so forth. How many volunteers? I know last year, obviously, we had the big blizzards. How many people did you have come out for this program to volunteer last year?
Last year, we ended up being able to draft a lot of community associations to get them involved. Our core volunteer rate was about 7 or 8 groups. So we really would like to have more volunteers. But we fielded about 52 calls from Snow Patrol during the blizzard.
Wonderful.
And during that time, we probably plowed or shoveled out about 10 to 12 families. And they have to bring their own shovels or their own snow
Okay, I was
blowers.
gonna ask you that.
Yes.
And I might add that this year we have partnered with the Naval Academy. So we have midshipmen that are going to be doing this. We just
Great.
got that off the ground, and
That's
so
awesome.
they will be, they'll be involved. That's being set up now.
That's
so
great.
that's a
And those are-
wonderful asset.
Yeah,
Yes.
capable bodies,
Absolutely.
strong bodies to do some
Absolutely.
shoveling. Great. So is there anything else that people should know about the Snow Patrol as far as if they have the need or if they want to volunteer?
Well, basically, if they want to volunteer, as I said, they need to contact the Volunteer Center. There is a background check.
Okay.
And that's really, really important. But they'll be able to, the Volunteer Center will be able to guide them and make sure they have all the information that they need in order to do this. And we're always looking for people because that sense of community is so important. We already do most of it, but this just sort of channels that into one area. And people stay normally in their own area when they do this.
Yes, we
right
try
in
to
their,
do that.
yeah, so they're not traveling all over the county, that type of thing.
That's great. So you're not required to have a four-wheel drive vehicle, but
No.
you are responsible for getting yourself
Right.
to
Right.
the residents who need assistance.
And the OEM has a four-wheel drive program. We have people that have been through our background check and license check who are able to pick people up, and we used them a lot during the blizzard last year.
Oh, so you actually did pick people up for Snow
We
Patrol?
didn't do the snow patrol. We did
Okay.
for some people that need medication, if they needed food, that type of thing,
I
or
see.
brought it. Yeah.
Okay. So have you used the Snow Patrol yet this year?
Not this year.
Not
yet.
this year?
Not yet. No.
Is that because of lack of requests or lack of availability of volunteers?
I don't think EOC's been open this year.
We've
has
had
it?
we haven't opened a couple times for the
Okay.
ice, the
Right.
things we were supposed to have, but it really never got to the point
Yeah.
that people needed that.
Okay.
People still call, but we never got anything
Okay.
to that. Last year was record.
And when situations get icy, we try to keep people in their homes as much as possible because it's not a safe situation for people to be out trying to walk around when you're frail or disabled. So,
Or even to be out in the bitter cold,
Oh,
even if
Exactly.
it's not slippery.
Right.
Right. I know in my neighborhood, we know all of our neighbors, so my husband gets out there and with the snow blower and takes care of the walks and so forth. So
That's great.
yeah, I would encourage residents to do that as well, so long as you know your neighbors. I'm sure they'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and we had a lot of neighbors do that last year too,
Great.
that we couldn't get to. That we found out that they had got neighbors that came over, and really, really good to hear.
It can
Really
be a
good
great way
hear.
to meet
It
your
really
neighbors
is.
too,
Yes, it
especially around
is.
the holidays and so forth.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So thank you, Ms. Karen Sank and Ms. Barb Buchleitner.
thank you very much.
And thank you for being here today to tell us about the Snow Patrol program, both from the volunteer standpoint as well as from the standpoint of anyone who may need assistance. So if you're interested in volunteering for the Snow Patrol, as Ms. Karen Sank said, please contact Anne Arundel County Volunteer, which Bill, I believe, is the contact. And his email is bill@volunteerannearundel.org, or you may call 410-897-9207 for more information. You may also download volunteer registration forms and review other opportunities at www.volunteerannearundel.org. And for Anne Arundel County's Week in Review, I'm Jody Leddy. Back to you, Erik.
Thanks, Jody.
There is more Week in Review to come. When we come back, Catherine Rovendro will join us to talk about the recent mental health forum that was held at Anne Arundel Community College. As we go into the break, take a look at the community events calendar for what is happening around the county. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Get your Smokey on. If you see someone in danger of starting a wildfire, step in and make a difference. Because 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back. This week, County Executive John Leopold hosted a very successful forum to discuss the challenges of providing mental health care in a difficult economy. Our special guest this week is Catherine Rovendro, Director of the Mobile Response Crisis Services here in Anne Arundel County, to talk about the event. Catherine, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. I think what folks really want to know, and something that I learned as we were talking off camera here, is just what do you do as a director of the Mobile Crisis Response System here in the county? It's more than I ever would have imagined. I think a lot of people hear it and they think it's just a phone call. There's somebody to answer the phone, answer questions, but you guys are actually doing a lot more than that, responding out to incidences. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's true. 11 years ago, the county had a wonderful idea that they could use this sort of a comprehensive crisis response system, and built into that system are probably the 3 things that we're most known for are the mobile crisis teams, the county's warm line, which is our hotline for suicide prevention, and resources and referral for a lot of different agencies that call us and individuals in the county. And then we have urgent care on site, which is a lot of people in today's world have a difficult time accessing service even if they know they need it. You know, families will call and say, I really think that this person in my family is having a very difficult time, or it's a mental health crisis and I don't know what to do. And sort of conventional ideas are going to the emergency room, calling 911. That's what happens in a lot of crisis a lot of the time, and we'd like to present another alternative in terms of having urgent care on site. Simply means that if the mobile crisis team, which I'll explain in a second, or someone off of the hotline, the warm line, call in, we can say, you know what, we can see you tomorrow, we can see you today. It's a very urgent situation, and I know that a lot of places in our county, and obviously nationwide as well, have a tough time getting people in a reasonable amount of time. You know, it's when you're having a mental health crisis, you cannot wait 3 to 6 weeks to have an appointment, or it's going to be a lot worse, or you're going to wind up going to the emergency room. So our county gets that, and actually we've had a lot of success with keeping people out of the emergency room, and in some cases out of jail, by being able to offer them the treatment that they need on site and immediately. So.
And the way we're doing mobile crisis and handling these issues here in the county, this is not something that's been around for 15, 20 years. This is somewhat of a new phenomenon that's been the last 10 to 15 years that it started.
It is. This is year 11 for us, but mobile crisis as a concept is fairly new nationwide. It actually started with a couple of different models. There was one in Berkeley. That's what we are modeled after as a county. And I must say, though, that our county's success with the way that we collaborate with other agencies in our county is truly unique. I've visited other mobile crisis teams, and I have a lot of awareness about how they operate, and it is different here in a good way. We have a really strong relationship with our police department in a truly collaborative effort in almost everything that we do. It's definitely expanded the way that we think and the way that we can get people who are really acute help much faster than we could have otherwise. Mobile crisis teams are, I get this question practically everywhere I go. Mobile crisis teams are clinicians, mental health clinicians, and they are a variety of backgrounds, you know, social workers, psychologists, LCPC, which is licensed clinical professional counselor. They're a variety of different disciplines, but all doing the same thing. They are highly skilled and trained trauma and crisis interventionists, and essentially we wear police radios on our hip. We do wear a uniform, and we have specially marked cars that are rolling around the county waiting to be dispatched like an ambulance. So if you can imagine that someone calls 911 and they're having an emergency of a mental health variety, anything really. In some cases, and I'll explain that in a second, it isn't a mental health crisis so much, but the death of a loved one. We do accompany police to what we call a death notification, because sometimes it's difficult for the family to be able to start to cope, and we stay. Well, the police have long left, and we stay and help the family. Those are some of our longest calls, honestly. They take an incredible amount of resilience, and the staff are amazing. But we do run all kinds of different mental health crisis calls, excuse me. I think if you imagine the sort of ambulance type of scenario in your mind where police are calling on the radio and saying, I need you to come to this address, and we show up, we have this whole menu of things that we can do once we get there. Get them back to the building and get medication or a psychiatry appointment. You know, do we need to talk with the family and get them support services in some other way that have fallen through the cracks? What does the person need right now? And of course we have substance abuse issues that we see quite frequently, and we can help facilitate, you know, getting inpatient or outpatient treatment. We're very, very well connected to all of the resources in the county, and they know us very well, and it's very easy to call and say, we're calling from crisis, we need, you know, such and such and such, and it's been very, very, very good.
Okay. Well, we know that there was recently a forum at Anne Arundel Community College. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, actually the county executive convened a panel of mental health folks and others to get together and talk about some challenges that we face. You know, the budget is ever shrinking for the sort of work that we do, and the need is ever growing. As other people's resources shrink, more and more people find themselves in crisis. A lot of financial crisis actually will cause a person who is normally stable and previously unknown to mental health systems to find themselves in need of mental health services. So things are shrinking, and we've had some really difficult situations as a county, both with youth and with others in recent years. Unfortunately, although it's not that different from other experiences nationwide, we're not unique in the way that we have needs that are growing. But I think our county executive recognized that we need to talk about how we can collaborate even further than we are right now. So the community college actually is interested in having the sort of collaboration that we currently have grown with the county's public schools. And you probably remember last year there was some unfortunate incidents with youth in the county public schools that required a great level of intervention, and I'm totally impressed with how we did that as a county. I'm so thankful that the people who are at the heads of these departments took it seriously. The chief of police, I can't say enough good things about. I can't say enough good things about the commander of the school safety section, Lieutenant Batten. He single-handedly said, you know, I know what you're telling me is a serious matter, and I will take it up, you know, up the channels, and let's do something.
I want to talk a little specifically about that, Catherine. We had, and what you're referring to is some of the suicides that we had from some of our high school students last year, which almost really was classified as a suicide cluster here in the area.
That's correct.
Specifically, how did you and your team intervene on these issues?
Well, it started with, actually, Lieutenant Batten had called me sometime prior to this incident taking place and said that he wanted to have in the county's public schools the same level of access for the school resource officers, who are, of course, police that are inside of the schools, to be able to call mobile crisis and have them see the kids on site in the schools in exactly the same way as police officers who are out in the larger part of the county in the field. Because he saw that there were kids that were suicidal that probably needed someone to talk to and probably didn't need to go in handcuffs, which is police protocol, to the emergency room. It's pretty traumatizing for a youth to say, I need help, and then have to leave in a police car in handcuffs, but that is the protocol. So he wanted an alternative because he saw what mobile crisis was doing for the larger department, and he said, I want this for the school resource officers, I want this. What do we need to do to make this happen? And he got me in touch with the superintendent, and we all started meeting together about how to make it happen. And we were just in the schools setting and getting relationships with all of the different counseling departments. And when we realized, a really wonderful clinician on my staff came to me and said, I am sorry to tell you this, but I think that there may be some connection here. I'm worried that there is some connection here. So I brought that to Lieutenant Batten, and he definitely brought that to the right folks. And in doing so, the county executive, the superintendent of schools, you know, the chief of police, the health department immediately convened together and said, this is a serious problem. We are losing some kids. There are kids taking their lives, and what can we do that is even more of a sort of interventionist modality to keep this from happening again? Mm-hmm. So essentially, out of that whole situation, the Youth Suicide Awareness group has formed, which by far in everything I've done in my life, and I've done a lot of different jobs, is probably the finest committee I have ever been a part of. Every agency that has anything to do at all whatsoever with youth in this mm-hmm. county is a part of this and trying to solve, you know, the problem and trying to promote awareness, because it is the third leading cause of death within youth nationwide. The third leading cause of death. We do a lot of stuff for prevention for mm-hmm. cancer and other things. This is something that kills students. This is something that is preventable. And sure. we want everyone who is in need to reach out and say, you know, I need help, and know that there will be somebody coming.
Yeah, that's so important. So if there is someone out there
mm-hmm.
who's in crisis or has a friend or family member who is, how can they contact you?
Definitely through the warm line. The warm line's number is 410-768-5522. It's 24/7, 365. Obviously, we get a lot of calls through 911. We'd like to encourage people, if they are not at that level, mm-hmm. to use the warm line. But you know, calling 911 is what people do, and that's okay, because they're still going to get
referred to you.
Absolutely. So all channels are going to lead back to the same organization trying to help.
Well, Catherine, thanks for joining us today. I think that the events that have happened nationally recently, the events in Tucson, a couple months before that, actually a couple of years before that, excuse me, the events at Virginia Tech, really shed light on mental health issues and how important they are for us to deal with them before they escalate. So thank you and your team, the Crisis Response Services of Anne Arundel County, for all the great work you do. And folks, we're going to be back with some more Week in Review right after the break.
I'm an electronics engineer.
I'm an agricultural economist.
My work matters to America's defense.
My work matters.
The talent pool of individuals with disabilities is 20 million strong. Become one of the many Maryland employers who have hired people with disabilities. See the possibilities, create opportunity.
Because work matters. Visit mdod.maryland.gov.
Welcome back. On February 15th at approximately 8:10 p.m., officers from the Southern District were dispatched to the 600 block of Wayward Drive in Annapolis for a report of a critically missing 91-year-old male with dementia. Joining us now is Public Information Officer Justin Mulcahy with further details on this investigation. Justin.
Thanks, Eric. Family members relayed that they were concerned for the male subject's safety as he left the residence around 5 p.m. for a walk in a wooded path behind the residence, and he had not since returned. Now, certified search managers from the Anne Arundel County Police Department, along with patrol officers, they began an expansive canvass of the area that the subject was last seen in and around, and ultimately they requested the assistance of other districts, also the Anne Arundel County Police Department's Aviation Unit, the K-9 Unit, and the Traffic Safety Section, along with aid from the Anne Arundel County Fire Department and Chesapeake Search and Rescue, who responded with a bloodhound. The missing adult was later located around 10:03 p.m. in the Rolling Knolls community by Sergeant Shannon Mack and Corporal Robert Townsend of the Aviation Unit, aided by the use of FLIR, forward-looking infrared radar technology. The missing adult was rescued about 200 to 300 feet down an embankment in a swampy, marshy area that would not have been conducive for a foot search. Infrared thermography cameras produce images of invisible infrared or heat radiation, and this technology aids law enforcement in searches by detecting the body heat of missing individuals. The missing adult was eventually carried out of the woods in this case and transported to Anne Arundel Medical Center for precautionary measures. Now, here are some safety tips for folks that you may know who have Alzheimer's or dementia. Obtain a medical identification bracelet for the person with Alzheimer's or dementia with the words memory loss inscribed along with an emergency telephone number. Additionally, keep an article of clothing the person has worn left unwashed and in a plastic bag to aid search and rescue dogs in the event the individual wanders off. Also, you can notify neighbors and relatives of the person's potential to wander and advise them to contact the police department immediately if the individual is seen alone or away from the residence, again, if they have this potential to wander. Also, give law enforcement, neighbors, and relatives a recent photo of the person with pertinent contact information. Do not leave a person with Alzheimer's or dementia unattended, especially if they may have a history of wandering. We're going to move on now to our second incident, and that took place on February 14th around 2:12 in the morning. That's when officers from the Western District responded to the lot of the T-Shirt Acura Nissan dealership located in the 3500 block of Laurel Fort Meade Road in Laurel for a report of individuals possibly stealing vehicles. Now, while en route, an off-site security guard was monitoring the activity and advised dispatch that the suspects were removing vehicles from the dealership's lot. After leaving the lot, the suspects were observed driving on Laureldale Drive towards the rear of the dealership. The first responding officer drove to the end of Laureldale Drive, about a quarter mile from the lot that the vehicles were stolen from, and he observed 3 suspects fleeing the area on foot. The 4 parked vehicles near the suspects matched the description of the vehicles that were given, and at that point, all 3 suspects fled on foot into a wooded area at the end of Laurel View Drive. Now, responding officers then established a perimeter in the area. With the assistance of a K-9 unit, also with the aviation unit, all 3 suspects were eventually located in the wooded area that they had fled into 30 minutes earlier. Further investigation revealed the subjects had smashed the windows of the vehicles and removed the key box off of the vehicles to obtain keys. Additionally, there were a couple other vehicles that were recovered in addition to the 4. Officers later discovered that these 2 additional vehicles on the lot of the dealership also had their windows smashed out and lock boxes removed. One of the suspects actually apprehended had keys to several of the vehicles in his possession. All 3 of the suspects were arrested and charged with stolen automobile, 4 counts each, also attempted auto theft, 2 counts, as well as malicious destruction of property, 5 counts. The first suspect in this case is Charles Akinsey, age 25, of 76 M Street Northwest, apartment 301 in Washington, D.C. Suspect number 2 is Brandon Fobte, age 25, of 5408 5th Street Northwest, apartment 2 in Washington, D.C. And the third suspect in this case is Othman Conti, age 29, of 4807 Daisy Creek Terrace in Beltsville, Maryland, in Prince George's County. Now, as always, if you have any information on any crimes or suspects mentioned on the show, don't hesitate to call, email, or text your tip to Metro Crime Stoppers hotline. That number is available 24 hours a day, toll-free at 1-866-7-LOCK-UP. You can also text message MCS plus your message to crimes at 274-637 or visit the website at www.metrocrimestoppers.net. Remember, phone calls are not recorded, callers remain anonymous, and you might be eligible for a cash reward of up to $2,000. Back to you, Eric.
Thanks, Justin.
Our Department of Aging and Disabilities is warning seniors to beware of telephone scams where callers are promising a new Medicare card. They really just want to get your name and social security number or other financial information. There are several versions of the scam, but the advice for anyone who gets an unsolicited phone call is to refuse to give out any personal information over the phone, so just hang up. According to the Retirement Industry Trust Association, telemarketing scams steal $40 billion from consumers, about 57% of whom are aged 50 and older. County police urge seniors to report any suspicious solicitations, whether they are by phone or door-to-door. You can learn more about fraud schemes targeting seniors by going to www.ritaus.org. And over in the Sports Palace, Eric, his high school basketball highlights and the Rec and Park Spotlight. Eric?
Thanks, Karla. Well, good day, sports fans. It's basketball, and yes, more basketball in this week's Sports Report. We lead off today with the 16-4 Lady Mustangs playing host to an equally talented 15-4 South River squad. During the first meeting, the Seahawks had their way on home court and beat Meade by 19 points. The Mustangs jumped out of the gates fast on Tuesday behind Amina Bailey's 12 first-half points. They were up 16 at the half. Things turned a bit in the second half, with South River cutting the lead to 7 at one point, but this would be as close as the Seahawks would come, as Meade wins their 13th straight, 63-46. Elsewhere, Maddie Keating scored 24 as Severna Park's 64 points to give the Falcons win number 12 with a 64-53 win over North County. Arundel picks up a convincing 20-point win, 68-48 over Old Mill. Jordan Brown lives up to her name with 17 points and 10 boards to help Southern defeat Chesapeake 61-40, and Broadneck moves closer to that playoff spot with a 46-30 win over Northeast. On the boys' side, the game of the week took place just a few blocks from our studios in Glen Burnie as the Gophers took on the Panthers. After a 14-14 tie in the first quarter, Annapolis began to make a run and went into the half up by 7, in part because of the shooting of Peter Patalonia, who scored 14 in the first half. Annapolis continued to play well and were up by 10 midway through the third. Glen Burnie, though, began to get hot, and Larry Mike took over the scoring as he put together a game-high performance, 31 points. The Gophers would battle back in the fourth behind a few big threes from Mike to tie the game at 68. After the tie, it was all Glen Burnie, scoring 11 more in the last 5 minutes to give the Gophers a 79-73 victory. Elsewhere, the games were pretty lopsided as Broadneck and Chesapeake. Broadneck made win number 19 look easy as they defeated Northeast 87-42, and Southern had no problem defeating the Chesapeake Cougars on their home court, 86-44. Well, in this week's Recreation and Parks Spotlight, Carolyn Ryan is at Sawmill Creek Skate Park to talk to the skater dudes. Carolyn.
Thanks, Eric. We're here at the Sawmill Creek Skate Park with Georgette Chaloup, Recreation Supervisor. Thanks for being on the show, Georgette.
Thanks for having me.
So we've got lots of activity going on here at the skate park, and you've got some skateboarding programs coming up this spring.
Yes, starting the first session for the spring is starting April the 7th. It's on Thursdays, starting at 5 o'clock. It's perfect for people who are kids or young adults who are just learning how to skateboard. They'll learn the basic skateboard etiquette. They'll learn stuff like ride fakie, switch turn, tack turn, and push and ride, basically.
Great. Now, what ages are the classes geared for?
We start at ages 6. They'll go up to ages 12. And there's 2 different levels. There's the first level, which is really beginner, and the second level, which they'll do like ollie and drop-ins, and they'll be able to use some of the ramps that we have here at the skateboard park in Sawmill. Then we also have this summer, we'll have weekly sessions. We'll have 3 half-day sessions from 9 o'clock to 12:30, and that also is about the same age group.
Okay. And how can parents get more information about these programs?
We can go to our website or call the Recreation and Parks office. Our web address is aacounty.org/recparks.
Sounds...
Yeah, it's awesome program. It fills up every year. So you want to register early. Registration has begun.
Great. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Carolyn. Well, I'll leave those skateboarding tricks and half pikes and all those other skateboarding words to those kids out there because they did a nice job, didn't they, Karla?
They did. Half pipe, Eric.
Did I say pike? Yeah, that's a fish. A half pipe.
We will leave it to the kids.
We'll leave the language to the kids, too. Karla, last week we had an interesting sports story about the 90-year-old woman teaching class. I've got an even better one.
Okay.
This is a heartwarming story. It's fantastic. Get your tissues because it's one of these great stories that just makes you feel good to be an American, to be a sports fan. But I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to get to the story.
Okay, let's hear about it.
Well, finally today, as I said, a story that's going to warm the hearts of all sports fans with dreams of ever playing in that big game. 17-year-old Jason McCluent, or J-Mac as his friends call him, has served as the team manager for his Rochester, New York high school team, Grace Athena, for all 4 of his high school years. J-Mac was diagnosed with autism at age 2, but has continued to prove to himself, his friends, and his parents that he's just like all the other kids. Well, last week, J-Mac was even better than all of his friends. In what will turn out to be one of the most special evenings anyone could ever imagine, the coach of Grace Athena allowed J-Mac to play for the first time in the last game of the season, for the last 4 minutes of this final regular season game for the Trojans. J-Mac proudly ran onto the court, took his first shot from behind the arc, and missed. But this would be about the only time he would miss. In the next 4 minutes, J-Mac underwent a storybook basketball dream. J-Mac went 6 for 10 from three-point range and ended the game with a team-high 20 points. Karla, just think, the guy was only in the game for 4 minutes. The only game he's ever played in high school. Coach puts him in there. He's got to have all these feelings, nerves going through him. Is 6 of 10 from three-point line. Scores 20 points. His whole team had played, they're playing 10-minute quarters. They're playing a 40-minute game. He was the leading scorer on his team. Yeah. He only played for 4 minutes.
He must have had it all stored up.
I guess so.
All of his greatness.
Just unbelievable. You got to feel great for somebody like that in a story like that. So it's always good.
Yeah.
So I see you in red today. Is this for Valentine's? Is this something?
It's Valentine's week.
Oh, it's a whole week for Valentine's? Do I have to get my wife a present every day of the week?
Well, did you get her something nice for Valentine's?
I got her flowers. And,
okay.
Left her a nice little card.
That's good.
So I did good.
That's good. I got my husband some pizza and beer.
Oh, well, we like that.
That's what he could have most wanted, I think. So it's a way to his heart.
Well, speaking of ways to our heart, I want to let everybody know I decided that the weather was just so cold around here, so much snow, that I personally was going to get a hold of Mother Nature and bring these 70-degree temperatures.
It's gorgeous
here in
outside.
County. 75 on Friday. I can't believe it. It's just a beautiful day out there. It feels like spring, and it's the middle of February. And there's still snow. That's the amazing thing. You look around, there's still
it was strange
snow
driving around today and seeing the snow. I wish it would stay, but at least we're getting our yearly thaw.
Yep, in Michigan it's probably in the 20s.
It's not.
Well, that wraps up this week's edition of Week in Review. You can watch this episode online anytime at www.aacounty.org. You can find our archive episodes. They're available at blip.tv and YouTube. And if you want, subscribe to the free video podcast at iTunes. Please tune in again next week for more highlights and news from around the county, and we'll see you next week.